The council chamber floated in space like a massive crystal, reflecting the light of 3 nearby stars. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated sections. Some had scales, some had fur, and some had bodies that seemed to shift like liquid. At the far end of the circular room, the human delegation occupied a small section that looked plain, compared to the ornate seats of older council members. Ambassador Deho stood at the speaking platform for the 6th time in 3 years. His hair had more gray in it now than when he first arrived at this station. The lines around his eyes had deepened from countless nights reviewing documents and preparing cases that seemed to go nowhere. He wore the simple dark blue uniform that all Earth diplomats wore. Refusing to adopt the flashy robes that other species favored, behind him sat Trade Minister Haijin, her fingers moving across a datapad as she tracked every word spoken in the chamber. Admiral Taiyang sat perfectly still in his military dress uniform, watching everything with dark eyes that revealed nothing. These 3 had become familiar faces to the council over the years. Always polite, always following procedure. Always patient. Today, Deho presented holographic evidence that floated above the platform for all to see. Images of human mining colonies, timestamps of Chromoth vessels entering restricted zones, and documentation of 17 separate incidents where the Chromoth Collective had seized territory that humanity had legally claimed. The Chromoth were a powerful species in the council, with long tentacles and multiple eyes that could see in spectrums humans could not. They had been members for over 2,000 years and had many allies. This evidence is clear, Deho said, his voice calm and measured. The Chromoth have violated established boundaries repeatedly. Human colonists have been displaced. Resources that belong to Earth and her colonies have been taken. We request Council intervention as outlined in Article 42 of the Concord Agreement. He had made similar speeches before, each time with more evidence, each time following the exact protocols the Council required, each time hoping for a different result. Councillor Vrenix rose from his elevated seat. The massive mantis-like creature towered over the chamber, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. He had served on the council for 3 centuries and spoke with the authority of someone who had seen countless species come and go. The council acknowledges humanity's concerns, Vrenix said, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. However, we must consider the historical context. The regions in question have complex ownership histories dating back millennia. The Chromoth claim ancestral rights to these territories from before humanity even achieved spaceflight. Haijin's jaw tightened, but she did not look up from her datapad. Taiyang's expression did not change at all. Deho nodded respectfully. We understand the Council values historical context. However, current Council law, established 400 years ago, clearly states that territorial claims must be actively maintained. The Chromoth abandoned these regions for over 6 centuries. Humanity followed proper procedure in claiming them. We filed all required documentation. We waited the mandatory settlement period. Yes, Vrenix interrupted, waving one of his blade-like arms dismissively. Young species are always very concerned with procedure, but the Council must balance many interests. The Chromoth are valuable members with extensive trade relationships. These disputes take time to resolve properly. A Chromoth representative, High Commander Veskir, made a chittering sound that the translators converted to laughter. Perhaps the humans should focus on learning patience rather than grasping for resources they cannot properly defend. Several other council members made sounds of agreement. The massive slug-like Borthians rippled their approval. The bird-like Kishari clicked their beaks in a pattern that meant consent. Deho's hands remained relaxed at his sides. His face remained pleasant. We are not asking to bypass procedure. We are asking the Council to follow its own laws. 3 years of further review is not justice. It is avoidance. Phoenix's large eyes focused on Dio with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. Ambassador, humanity has held a council seat for only 23 years. Many of us have served for centuries. We understand how galactic governance works. Perhaps your species needs more time to adapt to the reality that the galaxy does not move at human speed. He paused, then added, "The Council votes to table this discussion for further review. As we have done before, we will examine the evidence and respond when appropriate. Young species must learn that being granted a council seat does not mean the galaxy revolves around their concerns." The vote was quick. 32 species voted to table the discussion. 11 abstained. Only 4 voted in humanity's favor. All smaller species who had little power in council politics. Deho stood at the platform for a long moment. Something changed in his posture, though it was subtle. The permanent slight smile he always wore faded. His shoulders, usually relaxed and open, squared themselves. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Still calm, but with an edge that had not been there before. "I request a recess. The human delegation needs to deliberate." Phoenix waved his approval. "Granted. We will resume in 2 hours to discuss the Borthian trade dispute." The 3 humans stood and walked out of the chamber together. They did not speak as they moved through the corridors of the station. Other species moved aside to let them pass, barely noticing the small delegation from the young species. Humans had become a familiar sight over the years, always present, always following rules, always accepting whatever the council decided. When they reached their private chamber, Daiho waited until the door sealed behind them. The room was simple compared to the quarters of other delegations. Humans preferred function over decoration. Plain walls, basic furniture, and equipment that did its job without drawing attention. Hygiene was the first to speak. 6 times, Daiho. 6 times we have followed their process. 6 times they have dismissed us. Taiyang finally moved, turning to face his colleagues. "The Chromoth are planning to take New Jiju within the month. Our intelligence confirms it. They believe we will file another complaint and wait for another 3 years while they settle our colony world." Daiho sat down heavily. For the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to look tired. He looked at his hands, calloused from years of gripping podiums and shaking alien appendages in diplomatic gestures. He thought about the human colonists on dozens of worlds, working hard to build new lives, trusting that their representatives would protect them through proper channels. "They think we are weak," he said quietly. "They mistake our patience for inability, our politeness for fear." Hygiene looked at him. "What do you want to do?" Daiho raised his head. His eyes had changed. The diplomat was still there, but something else looked out from behind that gaze now. Something that had been waiting patiently for 3 years. "Call Captain Jiwan, contact Director Sora and Dr. Minnow, and send a coded message to Earth." He stood up, straightening his uniform. "We tried it their way. Now we try it our way." Taiyang allowed himself a small smile. What should the message say? Daiho walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were waiting to see if diplomacy would protect them. Somewhere out there, the Chromoth were preparing to take what they wanted, confident that the Council would do nothing and humanity would accept it. "Tell them," Daiho said. "That polite mode is shutting off." The human delegation's private chamber aboard the Council station had become more crowded. Captain Jiwan had arrived within the hour, her combat uniform a stark contrast to the diplomatic attire of the others. She commanded the Earth Defense Fleet's Rapid Response Division, and her ships were currently positioned 3 systems away on what the Council believed was a routine patrol. Director Sora appeared on the large view screen, transmitting from Earth's intelligence headquarters. His face was sharp and alert, despite the time difference. Dr. Mingho sat in a corner, reviewing files on his tablet. The Zenib psychology specialist had spent 3 years studying every species in the council, looking for patterns, weaknesses, and cultural blind spots. Daiho stood at the center of the room. Options. I want real options, not more diplomatic strategies. Sora spoke first from the screen. Our intelligence suggests the Chromith will move on New Jeju in 26 days. They have been assembling a fleet under the guise of military exercises. 300 warships, twice what they would need to intimidate a single colony world. They are not trying to hide it anymore because they do not believe we will do anything about it. Haijin pulled up financial data. The Chromith economy is heavily dependent on rare minerals. The territories they have seized from us contain some of the richest deposits in this sector. They are not going to give them up voluntarily, and the Council will not force them. The Chromith provide too much trade revenue to too many Council members. Captain Jiwan stood with her arms crossed. We can stop them, easily. Our fleet has been ready for 2 years. We have been running simulations of every possible engagement scenario. The Chromith rely on old tactics and older technology. They have not fought a real war in 3 centuries. They have grown soft. Tai Yang nodded. Our ships are faster, our weapons are more accurate, and our crews are better trained. But the moment we fire the first shot, we will be the aggressors in Council eyes. They will use that against us. Dr. Mino looked up from his tablet. I have been studying this problem. The Council species do not understand us. Most of them evolved on worlds that were relatively peaceful. They developed intelligence through cooperation with their environment, not competition. They do not have the same relationship with violence that we do. He stood and paced. When we are polite, when we follow their rules, when we wait patiently for justice, they interpret that as weakness. They think we are incapable of asserting ourselves. In their experience, species that can fight do fight immediately. Species that seek endless diplomatic solutions are species that have no other choice. Daiho listened carefully. You are saying they do not believe we are a threat. Exactly. We have been members for 23 years. In that time, we have never shown our full capabilities. Our ships in joint exercises always performed at exactly average levels. Our military demonstrations always showed basic technology. Our economic reports always understated our production capacity. We did this to avoid seeming aggressive, to fit in, to be good members of the galactic community. Sora smiled slightly on the screen. And it worked too well. We have census data from Council Intelligence Services. They believe we control 7 star systems. The real number is 42. They think our industrial output is comparable to a mid-level Council member. We actually exceed the combined production of their 12 largest economies. They believe our population is stable. We have grown by 2 billion in the past decade. Haijin stared at the data. How did they not notice? Because we filed reports showing exactly what they expected to see. And because they never checked. Why would they? We are the young species, the newcomers, the ones who should be grateful just to have a council seat. Sora leaned back in his chair. We have been underestimated systematically. Captain Jiwan moved to the tactical display. We have 72 combat vessels within a week of New Jeju. We have another 200 that could be there within a month. Our ships were not built for the small defensive actions the Council has seen. They were built for total war. She pulled up ship specifications. Every human vessel has weapons we have never revealed. Kinetic cannons that can punch through any known shielding. Electronic warfare suites that can shut down entire enemy fleets. And we have been practicing coordination on a scale the Council cannot imagine. Humans can manage complex operations involving millions of personnel across dozens of worlds simultaneously. We did it before we even left Earth. Tai Yang stood and walked to the window. Our entire military doctrine has been defensive for 3 years. We have absorbed insults, accepted territorial losses, and allowed ourselves to be pushed around. Not because we had to, but because we were trying to be good neighbors. He turned back to face the group. I have been thinking about this since the Council vote today, about the human history we left behind when we reached the stars. We fought world wars. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We learned very hard lessons about the cost of violence. And we wanted to do better than that. We wanted to join the galactic community and prove that humanity had moved past its violent history. But Daiho prompted. But the galaxy does not reward that kind of growth. The galaxy rewards power. The Council operates on influence and strength, not law and justice. We have been playing a game we thought was about diplomacy when it was really about dominance the entire time. Dr. Mingho nodded. The Council species see our restraint and think we are restrained because we must be. They do not understand that it is a choice. They cannot conceive of a species that is good at violence, but chooses peace anyway. Daiho sat down. The weight of the decision pressed on him. 3 years of careful diplomacy could end in a single action. But 3 years of careful diplomacy had also accomplished nothing. Human colonists were still being displaced. Human resources were still being stolen. And the Council was preparing to table another discussion while the Chromath prepared to seize an entire world. If we do this, he said slowly, we cannot do it halfway. We cannot fire a warning shot and hope they back down. We have to show them exactly what humanity is capable of. We have to make it so clear that they never question us again. Captain Jiwan's expression hardened with approval. Give the order. My fleet can be in position in 5 days. Hai Jin looked worried. The economic fallout could be severe. We could face sanctions, trade restrictions. Let them try, Sora interrupted from the screen. Our economy is more robust than they know. We can survive isolation if we have to. Besides, I suspect many of the smaller council members will see what happens and decide. They want to be on our side rather than against us. Daiho thought about the colonists on Nu, Shiju, families who had traveled light years to build new homes. Children who had never seen Earth, but were still human, still counting on their government to protect them. He thought about Councillor Vrenix's dismissive tone, the way the entire council treated humanity like children who did not understand how the adult galaxy worked. He stood up. We are going back to that council chamber in 90 minutes. We are going to tell them exactly what we have decided. And then we are going to give the Chromath one chance to make this right. And when they refuse? Tai Yang asked. Daiho's expression was cold now, all traces of diplomatic warmth gone. Then we show the galaxy what a species evolved on Earth is really capable of. We show them that humanity has been polite not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose peace. He looked at each of them in turn. Contact all human vessels. Code yellow. Prepare for hostile action. Captain Jiwan, move your fleet to staging positions. Hai Jin, prepare economic contingency plans. Sora, I want intelligence updates every 6 hours. Tai Yang, coordinate with Fleet Command. Dr. Mino cleared his throat. What do you want from me? I want you in that council chamber with me. When this is over, they are going to want to understand what just happened. You are going to explain to them why they should have never confused humanity's patience with weakness. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Captain Jiwan saluted sharply. It will be an honor to remind the galaxy why Earth's dominant species survived when stronger, faster creatures did not. Daiho allowed himself a grim smile. Send the message to Earth. Tell them we tried diplomacy. Tell them we followed every rule, waited patiently, and accepted every insult. And tell them that now, humanity reminds the galaxy what we really are. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Make sure every human ship knows the rules of engagement. We disable when possible. We kill only when necessary. We are not becoming monsters just because we are done being victims. We are showing them measured force, professional force, overwhelming force. But we are still human. We still choose to be better than our worst instincts. Everyone nodded. The message was clear. Humanity was taking off the diplomatic mask, but they were not abandoning their values. They were simply reminding the galaxy that those values were chosen, not imposed by weakness. Polite mode was shutting off, and the council was about to learn what that really meant. The council chamber looked the same as it had 2 hours earlier, but everything had changed. The human delegation walked back to their seats with a different energy. Other species noticed, but could not identify what was different. Daho's posture was straighter. Haijin carried her datapad like a weapon. Taiyang's eyes swept the chamber with tactical assessment rather than diplomatic observation. Dr. Mingo had joined them, and Ambassador Yunho had arrived from the Colonial Representative Section. Councillor Vrenix called the session to order. We will now discuss the Borthian trade dispute. Point of order, Daho said, standing. His voice cut through the chamber with an authority that had not been there before. The human delegation requests the floor for an announcement. Vrenix's large eyes swiveled toward him with irritation. Ambassador, we have moved past your earlier complaint. The council has voted. This is not about the vote. This is an announcement regarding Earth's position within the council structure. As per Article 18, any member species has the right to make formal declarations to the full assembly. The chamber stirred with confusion. Article 18 was rarely invoked. It was usually used for announcements of new colonies or major technological breakthroughs, occasions for celebration rather than dispute. Vrenix chittered in annoyance, but waved a blade arm in consent. Very well. The floor recognizes the human delegation. Daho walked to the speaking platform. This time he did not activate the holographic displays. This time he simply stood and faced the council. His hands clasped behind his back in a military rest position that half the chamber did not recognize. Members of the Galactic Council, humanity thanks you for the educational experience of the past 3 years. We came to this body believing in the ideals stated in the Concord Agreement. Justice for all species. Peaceful resolution of disputes. The rule of law over the rule of power. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. We were wrong. The Council does not operate on these principles. It operates on political influence, economic leverage, and the who. Threat of force. Species with power are protected. Species without power are dismissed. This is not justice. This is simply politics with prettier words. Vrenix stood angrily. Ambassador, this is inappropriate. I am not finished. Daiho's voice did not rise, but something in his tone made Vrenix hesitate. Humanity filed 17 formal complaints regarding Chromath aggression. We provided evidence. We followed procedure. We waited patiently for 3 years. And we were dismissed at every turn. Not because our case lacked merit, but because we lacked political power. High Commander Veskier, the Chromath military leader, made his chittering laugh again. Because you are a young species with more ambition than capability. Learn your place, human. Daho turned to face him directly. That is the core of the problem. You believe we know our place. You believe humanity is weak because we have been peaceful. You have confused restraint with inability. Haijin stood and approached the platform with her datapad. Let me correct some misunderstandings. The Council believes humanity controls 7 star systems. The actual number is 42. We have been establishing colonies at a rate that exceeds every other species in Council history. We simply chose not to advertise it. She projected data that filled the air above the platform. System after system appeared, each marked with the Earth symbol. The council chamber erupted in surprise noises from dozens of different species. The council believes human industrial output is modest, Hygiene continued. In reality, we exceed the combined production capacity of the Borthians, the Kishare, the Kilare, and 9 other major economies. We build more ships in a month than most of you build in a year. We chose to report conservative numbers to avoid seeming aggressive. The Council believes our population is stable at approximately 12 billion. The current number is just over 14 billion, with growth accelerating. We have more military-age personnel than the next 5 species combined. Councillor Vrenix found his voice. This is a violation of reporting requirements. Species must provide accurate census data. We did, Hygiene said calmly. We provided data that was technically accurate for the specific colonies and systems we reported. We simply did not report everything. Article 47 does not require disclosure of all colonial holdings, only those which engage in council trade. Our unreported colonies have been entirely self-sufficient. She returned to her seat. Admiral Taiyang stood and took her place. The Council has observed human military capabilities during joint exercises and defensive actions. You have seen approximately 15% of our actual capability. Our ships have hidden weapon systems. Our coordination exceeds anything the Council has witnessed. Our strategic doctrine is built on lessons learned from centuries of warfare on Earth. He activated a tactical display. The human fleet maintains combat readiness that would be considered extreme by Council standards. We can mobilize for total war in 72 hours. We have been studying every Council species' tactics, technologies, and weaknesses for 3 years. We know how you fight. You do not know how we fight. High Commander Veskier stood, his tentacles waving aggressively. Is this a threat? Does this primitive species dare to threaten the Council? Daiho smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Not a threat, Commander. A clarification. Humanity is formally withdrawing from Council mediation regarding the Chromath situation. We will resolve this matter directly. The chamber exploded with voices. Dozens of species spoke at once in languages that the translators struggled to parse. Vrenix pounded his platform for order. This is unacceptable. The Council does not permit member species to engage in unauthorized military action. And yet, Deo said, his voice cutting through the noise, Article 62 states that any member species has the right to self-defense when Council mediation fails. We have attempted mediation for 3 years. It has failed. Therefore, humanity will exercise its right to defend its territorial claims and protect its citizens. Ambassador Yunho stood, representing the human colony worlds. The colonists of New Jeju, New Bizin, and 17 other worlds have voted unanimously to support Earth's decision. We are tired of waiting for protection that never comes. We are tired of watching Chromath ships take what is ours while the Council debates. Dr. Minho approached the platform. Let me explain what you have misunderstood about humanity. Most Council species evolved on relatively peaceful worlds. You developed intelligence through cooperation. Violence was rare in your evolutionary history. You created civilization and then slowly expanded to the stars. He paced as he spoke. Humans evolved differently. Our homeworld was hostile. Predators, diseases, climate extremes, resource scarcity. We developed intelligence not just to cooperate, but to compete, to fight, to survive against impossible odds. By the time we created civilization, we had already learned to wage war on scales that would horrify most of you. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. Nuclear weapons, biological weapons, planet-killing technologies developed before we even left our solar system. We learned very hard lessons about the cost of violence. And we chose to be better. We chose peace. We chose diplomacy. He stopped and faced the council directly. But you should never, ever mistake that choice for inability. Human history is written in blood because we are exceptionally good at violence. We came to the stars hoping to leave that history behind. But if the galaxy will not allow us peace, then we will remind you why Earth's dominant species was not the strongest or fastest or most specialized. It was the one that refused to die. Daiho stepped forward again. The Chromoth Collective has 72 hours to withdraw all forces from disputed territories and pay reparations for damages caused. If they comply, humanity will consider the matter closed. If they refuse, we will remove them by force. Vesker laughed, a harsh chittering sound. Impossible. The Chromoth fleet numbers 300 warships. We have never lost a war. You have never won one. That is because we have never fought one, Daiho corrected. Not in space, not against you. You have no idea what we are capable of because we have been deliberately hiding it. That ends now. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. Any species that interferes with humanity's resolution of this matter will be treated as an ally of the Chromoth and will face consequences. Any species that maintains neutrality will have humanity's respect. Any species that wishes to support our position is welcome to do so. Councillor Vrenix struggled to regain control. The Council will impose sanctions. Trade restrictions. You will be isolated. Then we will be isolated, Daiho said calmly. Humanity survived for thousands of years on one planet. We can survive without the Council if we must. But I suspect many Council members will reconsider once they see what happens to those who mistake our politeness for weakness. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Humanity researched Council history very carefully. In 3,000 years, sanctions have been proposed 47 times. They have been enforced exactly 0 times against any species with sufficient military capability. You threaten sanctions because you have no other power over us. We both know you will not actually impose them because too many of your members benefit from trade with us. The human delegation walked out of the chamber together. Behind them, chaos erupted as council members argued, threatened, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. In the corridor, Yuno spoke quietly. That could have gone better. Or worse, Taiyang replied. Now we see if they are smart enough to back down. Daiho checked his communicator. Already, messages were coming in from smaller council species. Some expressed support. Some requested information about human defensive technologies. Some asked quietly about future alliances. They will not back down, Daiho said. The Chromoth have too much pride. And Vrenix has too much invested in maintaining the current power structure. They will test us. Good, Captain Jiwan said, having listened to everything through her communicator. My fleet is ready. It is time to remind the galaxy what humans are really like when you push us too far. 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The Chromoth response came exactly at the deadline, delivered by High Commander Vesker himself in a broadcast to the entire Council network. Humanity's ultimatum is rejected. The Chromoth Collective does not bow to threats from species who have barely left their homeworld. Our fleet will proceed with operations as planned. If the humans wish to test themselves against a civilization that has stood for 5,000 years, they are welcome to try. The message was accompanied by images of the Chromoth fleet assembling around New Jeju. 300 warships, each one massive and heavily armed. They arranged themselves in a traditional Chromoth battle formation, a pattern that had intimidated enemies for millennia. The ships gleamed in the light of New Jeju's sun. a show of power meant to cow the human colonists below. On the surface of New Jeju, colonist spokesperson Yoonji watched the sky with fear and pride mixed together. She had voted with the others to support Earth's decision, but seeing an actual fleet overhead made it terrifyingly real. Around her, 100,000 human colonists went about their daily lives with forced normalcy, trying not to look up too often at the ships that wanted to take their world. In the council chamber, observers from all 47 species gathered to watch what happened next. Many expected humanity to back down. Some hoped for it. A few smaller species quietly hoped the humans would succeed. Consular Venix addressed the assembly. Let this be a lesson about the consequences of aggression and disrespect for council authority. The Chromith will defend their historical claims, and the humans will learn that youth and ambition are no match for experience and power. That is when the sensor alarms began. Fleet Admiral Nari sat in the command chair of the Earth defense ship Indomitable, her expression calm despite the enormity of what was about to happen. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this. They were ready. All ships report ready. Her tactical officer sighed. All targets locked. Weapons control confirmed. Electronic warfare suites armed and ready. Communications added. NAR. I took a deep breath. Humanity had tried peace. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried patience. Now they would try something else. All ships, she said into the fleet-wide channel. Execute Operation Reminder. Show them what Earth's children can do. Captain Ji-Wan's rapid response fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly inside the Chromith formation. It should have been impossible. The calculations required to avoid collision at those speeds were beyond what the Council believed any species could achieve. Human navigation was simply better than anyone realized. Suddenly, there were not 300 Chromith ships surrounding New Jeju. There were 300 Chromith ships with 72 human vessels appearing among them like ghosts. Materializing from nowhere, the Chromith fleet panicked. Their formation, designed to intimidate and control, became a liability. Ships that had been positioned close together for maximum visual impact now risked collision as they tried to maneuver. Their weapon systems had been targeting the planet, not expecting threats from within their own formation. The human fleet did not give them time to adjust. Kinetic weapons, magnetic accelerators that launched solid projectiles at a significant percentage of light speed, struck with surgical precision. Human targeting computers, evolved from military technology that had once threatened to destroy Earth itself, did not miss. Chromith engine sections exploded. Weapons arrays shattered. Command modules went dark as power systems failed, but the humans were not trying to kill. They were trying to disable. Every shot was calculated to cripple without destroying. It was a level of precision that shocked the Council observers watching from their safe distance. Commander Dong-Yoon led his special operations teams in boarding actions that the Chromith could not comprehend. Humans in powered armor moved through zero gravity with a grace that came from evolving in Earth's heavy gravity. They were stronger than the Chromith expected, faster than seemed possible, and trained to a level that came from a species that had perfected military action over countless wars. They did not slaughter the crews they encountered. They secured them, disabled their weapons, and moved on to the next objective. It was professional, efficient, and utterly overwhelming. The Chromith tried to fight back. They had 5,000 years of military tradition. They had technology that was advanced by any standard. They had numbers on their side. None of it mattered. Human electronic warfare systems, developed by a species that had been hacking computers since before they had spaceflight, tore through Chromith networks. Ships lost communications with each other. Targeting systems reported false data. Weapons fired at coordinates where nothing existed. Human fighter craft. Small and fast, and piloted by artificial intelligences that the Council had prohibited, but humanity had developed anyway, danced through the battle space. They were too fast for Chromoth point defense systems. They struck with precision that organic pilots could never match. Fleet Admiral Nari broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring the Council observers heard every word. This is Fleet Admiral Nari of the Earth Defense Force. What you are witnessing is not humanity's full capability. This is a measured response, a professional military action designed to disable rather than destroy. We are showing restraint because that is what separates civilization from barbarism. A Chromoth battleship tried to target the Indomitable. Human countermeasures spoofed its sensors. Human point defense destroyed its missiles. Human weapons crippled its ability to maneuver. All in the span of 11 seconds. Humans have been peaceful for 3 years because we chose to be. Because we believed in the Council's ideals. Because we wanted to be better than our history. But we never forgot how to fight. We never forgot the lessons learned in 1,000 wars on our homeworld. We simply hoped we would not need them. Another wave of human ships emerged from FTL, reinforcements that the Chromoth had not anticipated. The Council observers watched in disbelief as the human fleet grew larger, while the Chromoth fleet grew more crippled by the moment. You mistook our patience for weakness, our diplomacy for inability, our restraint for fear. This was your mistake, not ours. Every human child learns about the wars that nearly destroyed our world, about nuclear fire and biological weapons, and the endless cycles of violence that almost ended our species. We did not forget those lessons. We just chose to apply them differently. High Commander Vesker's flagship tried to retreat. Human ships surrounded it, not destroying it, just containing it, making it clear that escape was not an option. Surrender now, Nari said, her voice hard. Order your ships to stand down. This can end with you alive and your crews safe, or it can end with your entire fleet disabled and drifting. You cannot win this fight. You never could. You just did not know it until now. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 4 hours. Not because the Chromoth put up effective resistance, but because the humans took time to disable each ship carefully, to secure each crew without unnecessary casualties. To do this by the book, even as they rewrote what the book said about human capabilities. By the end, 283 Chromoth warships were disabled and drifting. 17 had managed to jump away. None had been destroyed, though several dozen Chromoth crew members had been killed in the fighting. The human fleet reported 0 losses and minimal damage. High Commander Vesker surrendered. His last transmission was filled with disbelief. How? We have 5,000 years of military tradition. We have never lost a war. How did you do this? Captain Jiwan responded from her command ship. You never lost a war because you never fought a species that needed to be good at war just to survive their own homeworld. Earth taught us how to fight. The universe forgot to teach you. The Council observers sat in stunned silence. They had expected a battle. They had expected losses on both sides. They had expected humanity to demonstrate some capability, but ultimately prove unready for serious military action. Instead, they had witnessed something that changed their entire understanding of the galactic order. A species that everyone had dismissed as young and inexperienced had just dismantled a fleet that had been feared for millennia. And they had done it with restraint, with precision, with a professional military competence that none of them could match. Counselor Thruss, the peaceful aquatic species who had quietly sympathized with humanity, spoke into the silence. They were never weak. We were just too blind to see strength when it chose to be gentle. On New Jeju, Yunji watched Chromoth ships being towed away by human vessels. The threat was over. Her world was safe. She thought about the speeches Ambassador Deo had given, the patient diplomacy that everyone had ignored, and realized something important. Humanity had given the galaxy every chance to do the right thing. When the galaxy refused, humanity had simply reminded everyone what happened when you pushed too far. The message was clear. Humanity would choose peace whenever possible. But humanity could also choose war. And when they did, the galaxy would remember why Earth's dominant species had survived when stronger creatures had not. Fleet. Admiral Nari addressed her fleet one final time. All ships, secure prisoners, and damaged vessels. Render aid to Chromith wounded. We fought this battle because we had to, but we do not have to be cruel about it. Remember who we are. Remember what we stand for. As the human fleet began cleanup operations, every council species was recalculating their understanding of galactic power. The young species everyone had underestimated had just changed everything. And they had done it in 4 hours. 2 weeks after the battle at New Jeju. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same, but felt completely different. The same species sat in the same seats, but the atmosphere had changed fundamentally. Where there had been casual dismissiveness toward humanity, there was now wary respect. Where there had been certainty about the galactic order, there was now confusion about what came next. Senator Bora stood at the human delegation's seats. Having replaced Ambassador Deho, who had been promoted to Minister of Galactic Affairs, back on Earth, she was younger than Deo, but had the same calm competence. Haijin and Taiyang remained, providing continuity. Dr. Minho sat with them, now officially part of the delegation. This emergency session had been called by 12 different species simultaneously. Some wanted to condemn humanity. Some wanted to understand what had happened. Some wanted to quietly discuss alliance options. Councillor Vrenix called the session to order, his voice lacking its usual confidence. The Council recognizes that unprecedented events have occurred. The Chromith military action against humanity resulted in a decisive defeat. High Commander Vesker is currently in neutral custody awaiting trial for unauthorized military operations in restricted space. It was carefully worded to avoid admitting that the Council had been wrong. But everyone understood the subtext. The Chromith had been protected by Council politics, and that protection had failed spectacularly. A Borthian representative spoke first, its translated voice quivering with indignation. Humanity conducted unauthorized military action. They violated Council prohibitions on advanced artificial intelligence. They deliberately misrepresented their capabilities. There must be consequences. Senator Bora stood calmly. Let me address each point. First, Article 62 permits self-defense when Council mediation fails. We attempted mediation for 3 years. Second, the Council prohibition on AI is not actually a prohibition. Article 94 encourages limitations on artificial intelligence, but does not forbid it. We researched your laws very carefully. Third, we never misrepresented anything. We simply chose not to volunteer information you did not ask for. She projected legal documents that filled the air above the platform. Every action humanity took was technically legal under Council Charter. Perhaps if you had taken our complaints seriously, you would have researched our capabilities more thoroughly. Your assumptions were yours, not our deceptions. A Kishari delegate spoke up. You hid your true strength. You lied about your colonies. We reported the colonies that engaged in Council trade as required. We never claimed those were our only colonies. You assumed they were because it fit your image of us as a weak young species. Your intelligence services failed to investigate because you did not think we were important enough to investigate properly. Haijin stood to add financial analysis. Since the battle, 6 major Council economies have requested trade negotiations with humanity. 17 smaller species have inquired about defensive technology sharing. The Quillari have quietly moved their fleet away from human borders. Economic models suggest that sanctions against humanity would damage Council economies more than they would damage ours. She let that sink in. We understand the galaxy better now. It operates on power, not principle. You respect strength, not justice. We have demonstrated strength. Now let us see if you can demonstrate justice. Councillor Vrenix attempted to regain authority. The Council must maintain order. If every species resolves disputes through military force, then the Council should actually resolve disputes. Dr. Minho interrupted, standing. May I present my analysis? Vrenix waved reluctant permission. Minho walked to the platform, his academic manner unchanged despite the tension in the room. I have spent 3 years studying Council species. Most of you evolved on worlds that were relatively peaceful. Your relationship with violence is fundamentally different from humanity's. When humans are patient, you think we are weak. When we are diplomatic, you think we cannot fight. You lack the context to understand a species that is good at violence, but chooses peace anyway. He pulled up comparative data. Humans evolved under constant pressure. Predators, diseases, environmental extremes. We developed persistence hunting, complex tool use, and social coordination because we needed all of those things just to survive. By the time we achieved civilization, we already had weapons that could kill from a distance. We had strategies for warfare. We had the capacity for organized violence on massive scales. Then we almost destroyed ourselves with that capacity. Multiple times. Nuclear weapons before we left our solar system. Biological weapons that could have ended our species. We learned, through terrible cost, that our capability for violence had to be matched by our capacity for restraint. He paused, looking around the chamber. That is what you misunderstood. Human restraint is not weakness. It is hard-won wisdom. It is a conscious choice we make every single day. When you dismissed our diplomacy, you are not seeing inability. You are seeing us trying very hard to be better than our history. A small species in the back, the peaceful Lorians, spoke hesitantly. But you demonstrated that you are still violent. That you can still fight. Yes, Minho agreed. Because peace without the ability to defend it is just waiting to be conquered. We want to be peaceful. We genuinely prefer diplomatic solutions. But we will never again be so peaceful that we cannot protect ourselves. That lesson cost us too much to forget. Senator Bora stepped forward. Humanity is proposing reforms to Council dispute resolution. If our experience of being ignored for 3 years is possible, how many other species have suffered the same? How many smaller members have filed complaints that were dismissed because they lacked political power? 17 hands, tentacles, and appendages rose around the chamber. Species who had been silent for years suddenly saw an opportunity to speak. Councillor Thruss, who had always sympathized with humanity quietly, spoke openly now. The human is correct. The Council has become corrupt. Not through malice, but through complacency. We have allowed power to replace principle. I propose a complete review of dispute resolution procedures, with input from all member species, not just the powerful ones. The chamber erupted in debate. The powerful species resisted. The smaller species supported the idea. The middle powers calculated which side benefited them more. Taiyang leaned toward Bora and whispered, "This is going to take months to resolve." "Good," Bora whispered back. "Let them debate. Meanwhile, our fleet is ensuring that no one else tries what the Chromoth tried. Actions speak louder than Council resolutions." After hours of argument, a compromise emerged. The Council would review dispute resolution procedures. A committee would be formed with representatives from small, medium, and large member species. Humanity would have a seat on this committee. And most importantly, the reforms would be implemented within 1 standard year. Or any species could withdraw from mandatory council mediation. It was not everything humanity wanted. But it was more than they had achieved in 3 years of patient diplomacy. Counselor, Vrenix made one final attempt to save face. And what of humanity's military actions? There must be some acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we defended ourselves, Bora said firmly. We acknowledge that we used measured force to disable rather than destroy. We acknowledge that we treated prisoners humanely and rendered aid to the wounded. We acknowledge all of this because we are proud of how we conducted ourselves. What we will not acknowledge is that defending ourselves was wrong. She looked around the chamber. Polite mode is back online. Humanity will return to diplomatic solutions, will participate in council procedures, and will respect council authority. But never again mistake our choice to be polite for an inability to be otherwise. We tried to show you the better angels of our nature. You forced us to show you why angels carry swords. The session ended with no formal condemnation of humanity. Several species approached the human delegation afterward with quiet requests for discussion. The Quelari wanted to ensure no misunderstandings about their intentions. The Borthians wanted to negotiate exclusive trade deals. The smaller species wanted to know if humanity would really share defensive technologies. As the delegation returned to their quarters, Dr. Minho smiled slightly. They learned something today. What is that? Haijin asked. That humanity is truly dangerous. Not because we are aggressive, but because we are restrained. Anyone can be threatening when they are angry. But a species that can disable 300 warships while deliberately minimizing casualties, that takes discipline. That takes training. That takes a culture that has learned to control violence rather than be controlled by it. Tai Yang nodded. They respect strength, but they fear controlled strength even more. Senator Bora received a message on her communicator. She read it and smiled. Ambassador Deo sends his congratulations. He says the council just learned a phrase that humanity has understood for a long time. What phrase? Haijin asked. Walk softly and carry a big stick. For 3 years we walked softly. Today they finally realized we were carrying a stick the entire time. That evening, broadcasts across the galaxy discussed what had happened. Analysis varied by species and perspective, but certain themes emerged consistently. Humanity was more powerful than anyone had realized. Humanity preferred peace, but could wage war with frightening efficiency. And most importantly, humanity had just proven that the Council's political games had real consequences when pushed too far. In the human delegation's private chamber, the team gathered to review the day's outcomes. They had fundamentally altered the galactic power structure. They had forced reforms that might actually help smaller species. They had protected human colonies and interests, but they had also revealed capabilities that could never be hidden again. From now on, every species would watch humanity carefully. Some with respect, some with fear, some with the desire to test those capabilities again. Do you think we did the right thing? Haijin asked quietly. Senator Bora looked out at the stars. We tried it their way. We were patient, polite, and diplomatic.